A fantastic story of police corruption, betrayal, complicated, ever-changing relationships, with a well-thought-out and fantastically shot sci-fi twist and a fantastic soundtrack. Directed by Kathryn Bigelow and co-written by James Cameron and Jay Cox. Stars Ralph Fiennes, Angela Bassett, Juliette Lewis, and Tom Sizemore. Set during 1999, right before the chaotic eve of Y2K, the beginning of the new millennium, the story follows the ex-cop and black marketeer of squid discs, which are recordings that allow users to experience memories and even the physical sensations of those memories from the perspective of whoever was wearing the equipment to record those memories. From a first-person perspective, it's sort of like VR in the absolute extreme, really attaching to your mind. And these memories are recorded on what looks like a Sony mini disc from the time period. It follows Ralph Fiennes as Lenny Nero, who is a former LAPD officer turned sort of black market recorder and purveyor of these different memories, these squid recordings, and is largely about his trying to solve the murder of a prostitute, as well as explore and really focus on fixing elements in his own life which have been thrown into chaos, and everything else going around him, all within the construct of all these social issues, which are a combination of what was actually going on in the late 90s, particularly coming up into the millennium, and really focusing on larger social issues of racism, and touching on more personal things like voyeurism and rape, and all these different elements that are so of the time, that were important social issues of the time, really come into play here as a larger picture outside of just the smaller story of this individual and his struggle with what he's become versus his past, and what he's trying to accomplish during the course of the picture. So this is one of the LaserDiscs that just kind of came my way during the course of this year. Not one I looked at particularly, I'd never heard of it before, and largely because it was a huge box office bomb at the time, and I don't think was even a particular massive hit on the home video market. One that's kind of flown under the radar, and it's one that just kind of came my way free with other LaserDiscs, that type of thing. First time watching it, and man, I love this movie. It was so good, so much better than I was expecting going in, because I just never heard of it before, and I think it's a real hidden gem of the time period. And I think with the way that it deals with all these social issues, so much of it is still absolutely relevant today, particularly as we get into more and more advanced VR technology and the possibilities in the even like near future, within the next 10-15 years even, of how those things could be misused. But it also really has a big focus on, I think, a lot of issues of the time period which are still relevant, but things like the violence of the LAPD, and I think that's something that was focused on a lot between the LAPD and the clash with particularly the black community in LA. It was a very 80s and 90s thing to focus on in movies, and it's still something that's very, very relevant, particularly in the larger picture, but I think a lot of the ways things are dealt with here, it feels very much like a 90s movie and deals with a lot of 90s issues, but it's telling that they're still all very relevant today, and it works very well. The last couple scenes in particular, I think, would really resonate with audiences in the current political climate, and it's something where I think certain elements of this picture, again, feel very of the times, and other elements I feel like still could resonate and have this timeless quality to them. And I think part of why it really held me, and really still I think is a very powerful picture, is mostly from the performances, how they make these issues that even 20-30 years from now, when some of them might not be quite as relevant, they still have that same power, I think, because of the way it was shot. Just wonderful directing throughout the whole thing, and the performances that are given, just unbelievable. I think Angela Bassett was great, Ralph Fiennes was fantastic, and I really like Juliette Lewis. I really think she is, I always thought of her as a very underrated actress who I think many times plays very similar characters, but always does a good job, and this is definitely, I think, one of my favorite performances of her. She just does such a wonderful job of playing a person who is in many ways tormented by kind of just going down the wrong path in life, but still a very strong, independent individual, and really balancing those out. And I think that sometimes is hard to do. Playing someone who is a combination of hard luck and bad life choices, but you don't necessarily have to perceive them as like a victim. They're still a strong individual, and she does that very well, and sort of that almost junkie aesthetic, even when she's not really a junkie. You know what I mean? She kind of gets that really well. But everyone did an amazing job. I mean, you have a fantastic lead here that pulls everything off so believably, and I think there was a wonderful way in which the point of view shots are done very, very well in here when you go into the memories, and it feels very chaotic and very jerky, and feels you really are in the moment, and it adds to the intensity of what you're seeing, particularly when you get to the rape and murder later on, and different elements there. But even just in the very opening shot with the robbery, it just feels very like, whoa, what's happening here? It feels almost like shaky cam in a way, but like it works. It's not overdone. I think sometimes when if you look at a lot of the the more modern found footage type things, when they do that point of view shot throughout the movies, I think a lot of times they are a little too shaky cam, they're a little too jerky, and they really take you out of it. But here it's just enough that you are able to believe that you're seeing an event through someone else's eyes, but it's not so much that it's just like, whoa, calm down, buddy. You know, get off the caffeine with the guy holding the camera there. It really is done well, and I think this holds up visually so well because of the combination of aesthetics that it goes with. It's visually, when you look at it, it's like, okay, this is so 1990s. Like, this is like, you believe it's like the eve of Y2K. It's what I remember. It's so 1999 in its visuals. But at the same time, there are something about the lighting and color schemes that they go with, and certain elements they put in there almost give it a real like sci-fi aesthetic that takes it out of that 90s feel. It doesn't feel overly 90s. You're not seeing like Saved by the Bell colors here and that type of thing. It's a great combination. It's kind of like if you took the Blade Runner aesthetic but set its visuals 100% in the mid to late 90s. If you took that sort of look and feel but made it so very 90s with everything you're seeing on screen, it's that weird fusion, the weird mixture, I think is the way I would describe it. And it works really, really well, and it has a good blend of the thriller, action, sci-fi with an almost like film noir aesthetic to it, just to even like the pacing and things like that. It works really well. The different relationships between the characters are handled very well. Nothing came across as overly cheesy, and the dark and violent and dramatic elements of the picture never went over the top and never crossed that line, I think, sometimes where it's almost like trying to be shocking just for that shock value. It never went there. It always went to the point where you can be engrossed and you can feel the emotion that the movie wants you to feel and really draws you in without just being just like gross. You know what I mean? Like it never crosses that line. And just a brilliant movie, and I don't want to ruin a lot of it story-wise here. Just for one of these little laser talk things here, this is one that I could see myself revisiting though, and doing an actual half-hour long like analysis, real like review of every bit of the storyline type of thing. But yeah, and it's one that I think not everyone's going to enjoy. You have to be really into this. I think the look and feel and the aesthetic of it. And I remember one of the first times I heard about this picture at all was looking just even I think just a few months ago. I randomly stumbled upon on YouTube. They have all the Siskel and Ebert, the old 80s and 90s, like their TV show reviewing movies and things. And I remember them arguing about this movie where Ebert really liked it, but Siskel was like, I just couldn't get into it. And I felt like it was one of those didn't quite get it versus like really kind of got what's going on type situations, where I really disagreed with a lot of the criticisms that were given to it, and the praise really I think showed. I think it's one of those where it's either if you can't really get into the look and feel of the movie, I don't think you're really going to get heavily into the messages of the movie, and I think without that, it's not going to quite hold your interest and really like you. So I think it's one of those where you should watch a trailer and maybe a couple of spoiler-free reviews and really kind of get a sense of if this really is to your personal taste, like this style of movie, because it's one of those where I think sometimes you can look outside the box and really see something that's not normally something you would enjoy, but it really holds up enough that I think everyone can like it. And I don't think this is one of these. I don't think it's a universal appeal type movie, but I think if it is up your alley, if it sounds interesting to you and looks like something you might like, I think you'll love it. I think it's absolutely fantastic. Yeah, I really liked Strange Days, and I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it. It's absolutely fantastic. And just a note here about this particular LaserDisc release, it is fantastic. It's presented in its original theatrical aspect ratio, and the film transfer is supervised by the director. There is also an in-depth discussion with Kathryn Bigelow, the director, about the film's point of view opening sequence and her lecture at the British Film Institute. So that's really cool. And it also includes 2 additional scenes not included in the theatrical release, and a music video also directed by Kathryn Bigelow. So theatrical trailers, storyboards, production stills, I mean, there's everything you would want. Everything short of like a full making of featurette is included here, and it's just a regular gatefold release, really cheap and easy to find, not like a big crazy box set. So like to have all those extras included on something like this, that's pretty awesome and really adds to the experience. This is definitely a release to look out for. This is definitely a movie to look out for. If you feel like you might like this at all, if you have any inkling that this might be something you'd enjoy, I urge you to check this out.